I think human beings point to the existence of God and can give us some clues as to what God might be like. Hi, I'm Marcus, and I've written a short chapter about us in my book The God Puzzle. I've also made it into an animated video, but here I want to explore a few more thoughts. In a debate with Rowan Williams, Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, admitted that it is a thing most wonderful, almost too wonderful to be, that the laws of physics have conspired to make collisions of atoms get together to produce things like us. And if he dropped the word almost, I'd completely agree. But he won't. That, he said, would be an evasion of scientific responsibility. Presumably, though, responsible scientists could wonder whether someone has conspired to make the laws of physics such that they are. And one thing that might cause them to do that is how we stand out in this amazing world as uniquely extraordinary. I know we are like animals in lots of ways, but the similarities have been so overemphasized that we can be blind to the massive and significant differences that also exist. Both science and the arts have unconsciously collaborated to blur the distinctions between people and animals. Science sees us as animals, just another branch on the evolutionary tree of life, where a continuous series of beneficial copy errors is all that separates us from monkeys and mollusks. While science makes humans out to be animals, the arts love to make animals into humans. Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit and Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse popularised this rampant anthropomorphism, and ever since, countless cartoons and CGI movies have been filled with a menagerie of talking mammals and fish and birds and bugs. Basically, we are taught in the crib that animals are just different shaped humans, and then in the classroom that humans are just different shaped animals. After such well-meaning indoctrination, trying to point out the profound differences between us and animals is no small task. From some perspectives, the differences might seem really subtle, but take a step back and they become blatant. In fact, if you're not completely gobsmacked by the gap, it's hard to know where to begin. Look at swans courting and then watch a ballet. Listen to the dawn chorus and then go to a concert. Consider a bird's nest and then the International Space Station. Compare an ant's nest with New York, visit a zoo or stroke your pet, and then look at the people in your office or just meet someone for coffee. Hopefully you can see a huge, qualitative, remarkable difference between people and animals. There was a great scene in the 80s student comedy The Young Ones when Rick Mayall calls Neil a pig, to which Neil replies, "I don't mind being a pig because for your information, pigs are really intelligent actually." "Oh, they are they?" says Rick. "Well, tell me, Neil, who invented the internal combustion engine? Was it Porky the Pig? I don't think it was it? And the theory of relativity, was Pythagoras a pig? No, he was a Greek, wasn't he? So tell me, Neil, you're the expert, what's the major piggy contribution to civilization? It's bacon, isn't it? It's bacon and rooting around in the mud. Look out, Michelangelo, here comes the new piggy renaissance." Well said. I've tried to highlight the gargantuan gap between people and animals elsewhere, so here I want to explore 3 consequences that can come from equating humans and animals. First, we treat animals like humans. Second, we treat humans like animals. And third, we act like animals ourselves. So first, when we treat animals like humans, we put their welfare on the same high level as humans. Eating meat becomes murder, and it becomes morally questionable to exterminate animals that are harming humans. Some might even argue that we should exterminate humans who are harming animals. Now, I appreciate I'm presenting some extremes here, but this can be the direction of travel when we treat animals like humans without factoring in the important differences. Second, when we treat humans like animals, we dehumanize them. This can lead to degrading and mistreating people in various ways, even seeing them as vermin. If I can swat a fly, could I crush a person? If I can own a herd of cows, can I keep humans as slaves? Now, it doesn't always go in that direction, of course. Many who treat animals well protect humans with equal zeal, which is great. But it's the equality that's being made that still concerns me. And the flow of the argument too, which seems to be we should treat humans well because we should treat animals well. which doesn't feel like a firm enough basis for human dignity, value and worth. The third implication of equating animals and humans is really just a corollary of the second. If we are animals, then perhaps we can find moral justification or even moral motivation for certain sorts of animal-like behaviour. If other animals behave that way, what can be wrong with us aping their actions? It's a scary thought. The female praying mantis feasts on its mate's head, and primatologists report that female chimps sometimes kill and eat immigrant females and their young. But just because animals do it, don't make it right. We even have a saying for it. We're not animals, you know. I know people are like animals in some ways, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that we're also very different, and that the degree of difference highlights to me the existence of an important discontinuity between us. Animals do not therefore provide a sufficient framework within which to understand people and vice versa. But perhaps there is some sort of quantitative property shared by humans and animals that should determine how we treat them and us. Some say it's the capacity for suffering that is the key factor here. An ant or bacterium is presumed to have very little capacity for suffering, and so we would need millions of them, billions perhaps, before their pain balances out even the smallest amount of human suffering. But I wonder how we could know how much an ant suffers. It also raises questions about the morality of killing people in their sleep. Is the only reason for not doing so that other people would sleep less soundly in their beds? Or is there something about human life that is of value in and of itself? A story is told, apparently a true one, of a boat adrift at sea. As hunger sets in, the men aboard the mignonette decide that their only hope of survival is to murder and eat one of their number. They cast lots and set upon the unfortunate loser. They hoped to keep their cannibalism a secret, but when they were finally rescued, their grisly, perhaps grisly crime came to light. So let's change the story a little. Let's say there were only two people in the boat, a strong and successful surgeon and a weak and incompetent cabin boy. As the cabin boy sleeps, the surgeon decides to painlessly kill him. After all, he reasons, the cabin boy has no surviving friends or relatives. No one will miss him. No one would ever know. Would it be okay for the surgeon to save himself in such a way? Is survival of the fittest a helpful moral plumb line here? Or survival of the most beneficial to society? Or survival of the one with the most potential for pain? What if instead of a cabin boy it was a crate of rabbits with enough grass to keep them alive for several months? Should the shipmates kill the wabbits to stave off starvation?
Kill the wabbit?
While these would you pull the lever type thought experiments often have no good outcome, they can sometimes help us tease out our deepest moral intuitions. You may disagree with me, but for me, a person's value is not related to their strength or potential or suffering. It's of a different order of magnitude and in fact on a different scale altogether than that of animals. And it's these convictions that point me to God, because why else would people have such intrinsic value? The best answer I know of is that they have value to God, to the God who made them, who sees them as valuable, and who will hold accountable those who desecrate them. I can see, though, that some sort of notion of suffering potential is the best alternative to theism. It starts from a feeling that my suffering is bad, and generalises to the premise that global suffering should be minimised. It then argues that suffering is proportional to mental capacity, which is assumed to be proportional to something like brain size or activity. The conclusion then is that a person's value comes from the grand goal of minimising global suffering. Now, there are lots of logical leaps there, but even so, for me, it seems that the value of humans is grounded in more than just their capacity for pleasure and pain. In noticing that humans are unique, there is always in the back of my mind the question of how to think about ancient human-like species, the most famous of which are the Neanderthals, who coexisted with modern humans up until around 40,000 years ago. They fashioned tools, made marks on cave walls, and even buried their dead. So maybe we don't stand out so much after all. A few things, however, keep me from abandoning the conviction of our uniqueness. First, there may have been quite a bit of interbreeding going on between Neanderthals and modern humans, so it wasn't like we were hugely different from each other. It wasn't like Star Wars with several vastly different intelligent species walking around and coexisting with each other. Second, all the other species died out. Neanderthals didn't survive. It's actually a point in favour of our uniqueness that though there could have been several human-like species coexisting today, there is only one, us. Third, around the time when Neanderthals became extinct, there seems to have been a rapid advancement in our abilities, such that we went from fashioning flint spearheads to putting a man on the moon. Around 50,000 years ago, there was what the New Scientist calls a great leap forward. Human culture starts to change much more rapidly than before. People begin burying their dead ritually, create clothes from animal hides, and develop complex hunting techniques such as pit traps. Modern humans spread out over the world, replacing other human-like tool-using species, the last of which reportedly became extinct around 18,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, we developed villages and agriculture. 6,000 years ago, we have cities and civilizations appearing. 200 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution. And 40 years ago, the Internet. Only our culture and language and technology experiences this dramatic exponential acceleration. So while there were some developments in the dim and distant past that began to set a small group of humanoid species apart from other animals, the super uniqueness of modern humans is really only a relatively recent phenomenon, and a completely unique one. Neanderthals may muddy the waters of my novelty argument just a little, but don't let them blind you to our startling, staggering uniqueness today. 50,000 years ago it might not have been that dramatic, but now it's undeniable. There is one more thing that I want to highlight, which I think makes us stand out from animals, and that is the phenomena of giftedness. While the abilities common to most humans are enough to separate us from animals and point me to God, certain individuals' level of giftedness takes it to a whole other level. Why are some people born with extraordinary, apparently innate abilities in some or many areas? They can just paint really well, or play the piano, or understand mathematics. Then there is the strange phenomena of acquired savant syndrome. Derek Amato had never played the piano before, at least not more than the occasional rendition of Chopsticks. But shortly after a serious head injury, he walked up to a piano and started to play his own complex compositions fluently. He described it as almost as if someone basically plugged a super intense musical stream into my brain. It's 24 hours non-stop composition, even when I'm sleeping. Where is that coming from? What are we and what is in us that these gifts can be activated in such a way? Why would survival on the savannah produce a child who can play the violin, multiply massive numbers in their head, or paint beautiful portraits? I struggle to believe these latent artistic and mathematical abilities are simply side effects of survival adaptation. You can dismiss that as an argument from incredulity if you like, but these bizarre abilities really stand out to me. Along with our normal uniqueness, they indicate that there is something truly special about us that sets us apart from mere animals. It's more than simply fortuitous copy errors in our DNA. The theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson remarked, "The great mystery is that we do as well as we do, considering we only just came down from the trees." Not only do I marvel at our gifts and abilities, I know humans have value independent of our abilities, and certainly beyond our capacity to suffer. To my mind, our ability and value point to God's design and purpose for us. The Bible says we were made for a relationship with God and to be representative of God. Our gifts and abilities flow from this goal and point to it, but are not themselves the basis of our value. We are valuable because God values us. However much Peter Rabbit or Mickey Mouse might protest to the contrary, they were not made for a relationship with God, nor to represent God in the way that we are. When we equate animals with humans, or take the next step and deify animals, we are in danger of not only devaluing ourselves and other people, but camouflaging a key signpost to God. In fact, if we were truly made in God's image to represent God, I wonder if it might be more correct to say that we are not just a signpost, but the signpost. Thinking about it though, there is only one person who that is completely true of, and that is the person of Jesus. Being fully God and fully man, he fully reveals God to us, such that he is not just the sign to God, but also the way to God. I think people point to God, but if you really want to find him, look at Jesus and follow him.